Taking place at Stormont Parliament buildings was the Mock Council of the European Union. The event is aimed at 16 to 18 year olds and appeals to students with an interest in European affairs and politics. Students worked off the format used by the main decision-making body of the European Union. They had a chance to practice their debating and diplomacy skills in a realistic setting observed by teachers and students from the 28 participating schools throughout Northern Ireland.
I am a very strong personality and I thought I wouldn't have a problem, but actually under the pressure when Bulgaria speak and you are put under pressure, shaking and stuff, it's quite nerve-wracking getting your point across as quickly and concisely as possible and to sort of persuade other countries to agree with what you're trying to get across. Yeah, it was quite difficult and didn't expect it.
It's threats to our national security. We believe we should form a coalition to defeat ISIS. Britain has given £1 billion in aid, more than any other EU nation, to the countries neighbouring Syria, and this must be respected.
Thank you very much.
Our economy is only just recovering.
The two main topics on the agenda today at the EU Mock Council were the EU migration crisis and the EU's £315 billion back-to-work investment plan.
Austria believe that there should be a mandatory quota for each country and a certain amount of migrants they should take in, and they don't believe there should be like military intervention or anything like that.
The Netherlands believe their borders are open, so they believe that they accept asylum seekers but not economical migrants.
Well, do you think Angela Merkel's welcoming of the migrant crisis was a good thing?
Initially it allowed a flow of migrants through Europe, but then once she stopped it created a bottleneck throughout Europe, so it had a negative impact overall.
I think it was positive because migrants should be treated like humans and not like animals that just are brought into a country.
Borders is not an option or a variable, it is a responsibility. We need to work further on ideas of how to develop and elaborate and integrate border management and fight more effectively against human traffickers and smugglers. It is therefore vastly important to set effective work of migration flows control.
So what were the main subject matters your country wanted to face when it came to this problem?
Austria wanted for other countries to take more responsibility because that past weekend we took in almost as many migrants as the UK have said they would take in over 5 years, and we just sort of felt like it needed to be spread out more evenly because we couldn't cope with the influx for like our transport system and things like that.
One of our main concerns was also agreeing how migrants need to be spread evenly throughout all the countries rather than just being brought into just one or two different countries.
Do you think that there's any countries that you can see that are not doing enough and really should do enough?
There's a lot of pressure on larger European countries like UK, France, Germany, but we also need to look at the smaller countries that maybe aren't as much on the radar at the moment.
Do you think there would be a great help if countries like the United States would step in and invest in this problem in terms of the migrants and help out the EU?
Definitely, because like the US were sort of a part of the creation of the migrant crisis because it was them who sort of were instrumental in the creation of groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS, so they sort of need to take responsibility for their previous actions and take a step up and help with the migrant crisis.
I think it affects so many countries, so it's not just within the EU. As agreeing with Phoebe, it affects the whole world.
Despite even best efforts, we did not have the resources to cope. And we are in no way attacking Germany for doing what they could, but when a country is seen to be more favourable than others for refugees, they're
much. Just like Latvia, Estonia was a former Soviet bloc up until over 20 years ago, we don't really have the experience that a country like Spain or the UK does.
And if there was a solution to the whole problem, what would you suggest it is?
I'd say that all the countries need to take their fair share of responsibility and they all need to work together to fix this problem. That they can't use military force to fight because it'll just cause more problems within the country, and it won't stop the migrant crisis because there'll still be violence and it'll just create a new war, and they just have to help human lives.
I think they need to stop the war before we start worrying about the migrants. I think the war is the crux of the problem, and if larger countries can help with the migrants coming in and sorting the war out, then that'll end the problem.
You know, we constantly have the political side of this and the views on this. In my eyes, it seems like the public really want to help with this. Do you see that the citizens of countries are very, very welcoming of the migrants?
I think there are some cases where people aren't as educated on the whole issue, and they sort of say things like bigotry comments about migrants coming in which aren't fair on the people, and they can be quite selfish about it, although that's probably the minority, and the majority would help people. And you can sort of see that at, like, in Germany, there's like lots of citizens at train stations welcoming people in. That's before the borders closed, but yeah.
And the citizens of your country, do you see them as very welcoming of migrants?
Well, we have seen the campaign of Share Your Home with a Migrant, and I think that's actually quite a smart idea. If people had a spare room or two in their houses that they could maybe spare for migrants.
Can we forget the £1 billion we've given aid compared to Finland's 40 million? No, we can't. We can't forget either with the HMS Bulwark service in the Mediterranean. Finland is only taking how many 13,000 refugees. How come Sweden can take 65,000? We must wonder this. And next I'd like to move on to Germany. We also took a stab at us with planning to sit on the sidelines of this crisis. I'd say again with HMS Bulwark.
This €315 billion investment in Europe, how is this different from anything else, such as the European Investment Bank? Is there anything different about it?
Definitely Bulgaria felt that they needed a huge boost of the investment, and so did a lot of smaller EU states, that they do not reap the benefits from the European Union, as well as maybe more industrialised powers such as Germany and the UK. So definitely I think it would be a huge boost of investment for the smaller states.
It's really based on like every country investing, so it's like bigger countries helping the smaller countries, whereas we were representing Bulgaria and they really needed the help of larger economic countries such as the UK and France, but we couldn't really help much with them. But it was good that they could benefit from these issues.
And do you think this will have a positive effect on jobs and growth within the European economy?
Well, yes, we're hoping so, primarily for those who have a higher unemployment rate than those, is highlighting again the smaller EU states, definitely, and ensuring that they will grow economically and flourish in that way.
When you were talking about it today, what was the major topic involved with the investment? Was there anything specific that you spoke about that you thought really needed talking about?
There was a kind of a theme. It was all relating back to those EU states who are in crisis. Greece was the main one. They also hit out at Ireland a few times, and it's the idea of what those smaller states are getting back from the EU and what they're reaping in and what they're putting in, and that smaller states believe that they should get as much back into their economy than what the UK are getting back and what they're investing. So that's basically evolving the EU itself.
What was your country's view on this?
We were a poor country, so we really needed the help, and it taught other countries to be more selfless, because the richer countries needed to help us out because we can't afford to support our own. And then there's also the migrant crisis, so we need to support ourselves as well as other people.
These migrants are people. If they come to Italy, we can't afford to give them the quality of life that they are looking for. And so I think other countries need to step up and show solidarity in the EU. Spain.
And the response to Latvia is today it shouldn't be about poverty, it should be about the people surviving, about life and death, but saving lives, and that's more important than ensuring people aren't left out of your own poverty issue. We need to increase this awareness to a global platform. So we agree with the proposition that we have to make sure that the whole of the world is going to help out with this crisis, because this is a crisis. It's refugees, and we all have.
And after today, can you see the extreme difficulty countries face working together?
It really taught you that countries had to be selfless, because it's the European Union, and it doesn't seem to be much of a union. It's defend your country, defend what you want. It's not think of everybody, think of the whole picture.
I sort of found that no one really changed their views based on what other people said. They sort of had their set views and what they wanted out of it, and what you were saying didn't really have that much of an impact on what other people wanted.
It even shows you every single type of parliament, it's so hard to get your point across and to get other people to agree with you, because they're just literally I don't care about your opinion, I care about mine. It's very hard to get your point across.
Each country has to be selfish because their own nation has the needs, and their people won't be happy if they don't come out with the income that that country wants. So they aren't really in a position as an individual to change the views of their country based on what other people are saying. So it's hard for it to be a decision made at one time because it doesn't take into account the views of everyone else in that country.
Like, as we learned earlier, they're the 8th largest economy in the world. We believe that
important in causing the crisis cannot and should not sit on the sidelines of the solution. This is not the attitude which makes the EU strong. We recognise that these plans for resettlement will cost a lot of money and recommend that the European Commission makes funding available for countries willing.
The large influx of migrants entering the EU.
What I learnt was that it's difficult to distinguish between emotional side and actual what other people in the country think. So you have to be individual and also try to imagine what other people in your country are wanting you to say, not just what you think. I think it's quite exciting to work as a team, so it's not just as if you're debating by yourself. You have two people behind you giving you ideas throughout, so it helps you to think of a new idea that might be interesting.
It's really opened my eyes to actually what the European Commission do, and the debates like this that go on, and I'm definitely going to inquire more into them and maybe get a bit more passionate for politics, definitely.